Today's podcast is brought to you by Chikara Wrestle Factory, 4711 Wingate Street, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, specializing in lucha libre, porosu, European, British, and German styles, mixed martial arts, and American pro wrestling, all built into the curriculum at the Wrestle Factory, where they strive to create the most well-rounded performers active today. Hey yo, Pro Wrestling Podcast listeners, help us out, click the subscribe button, and show us your support. Hello everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Pro Wrestling Podcast. This episode, we're going to discuss all the news and rumors in the world of professional wrestling. We're going to get started with New Japan's Sakura Genesis 2017. This card is stacked from top to bottom, and they just finished releasing the entire match lineup, and it is headlined by the IWGP Heavyweight Champion, Kazuchika Okada, one of the premier talents in the world, going up against Katsuyori Shibata, who just won the New Japan Cup only a week ago. This is a match that I am very much looking forward to. Shibata has really got the opportunity to be established as a top main event star for New Japan. He has been there for a very long time. He's earned this opportunity. You can almost compare his rise to that of Christopher Daniels in Ring of Honor. And Kazuchika Okada, always capable of putting on a 5-star, even as a 6-star quality match if you go back to Wrestle Kingdom this year, and this should be nothing short of an amazing matchup. They have really built this in a solid way. These two are able to tear the house down, and I cannot wait to see what these two can put together. This should be a technical masterpiece. They're going to follow that up with the IWGP Junior Heavyweight Championship, with Takahashi, the champion, defending against the former and longtime IWGP Junior Heavyweight Champion, Kushida. These two guys, they're capable of doing all the high flying, all the high spots, but they're also all about submission wrestling. Kushida is one of the best submission specialists in New Japan Pro Wrestling. This should be an amazing, amazing competition. The Never Openweight Championship is going to be defended. The current champion is Hiroki Goto. He is a brawler, a bruiser, thick. This guy is insane talent. He is kind of built in the mold of Jim the Anvil Neidhart from back in the 80s, where he was just the bulldozer. He's going to go up against Zack Sabre Jr., who has just been lighting the world on fire, whether it's the United Kingdom, here in the States, in Japan, down in Mexico. He has traveled the world, and the last year has been like a coming out party for Zack Sabre Jr. This match should be phenomenal. The IWGP Tag Team Championship will be defended by Satoshi Kojima and Hiroshi Tenzan. Tenzan just celebrated his 46th birthday. They are the Tag Team Champions. They will be defending against Ring of Honor's War Machine. And this also should be a very physical, tough battle. I'm fully expecting War Machine to walk out with the IWGP Tag Team Championship. The stalwart of the company, Hiroshi Tanahashi, is going to team up with Juice Robinson and Raizuki Taguchi and Ricochet, and they are going to take on Tetsuya Naito, Sanada, Evil, and Bushi. This should be one of those matches where you see everybody just find a way to get into the ring, hit all their high spots. There's going to be inside, outside the ring action, tons of interference, I'm sure, and these guys can really tear the house down. Tanahashi obviously is on the backside of his career. He has not had the same level of success he's had in previous years, but he is still a top draw in New Japan Pro Wrestling. And Sanada, Evil, Bushi, all these guys, Naito, all looking to climb to the top echelon of New Japan Pro Wrestling. This is the kind of match that can do that. Ricochet being involved is always a pleasure. He's going to hit some of those high spots that become instant classics that you look up on YouTube and are just amazed by every time you turn them on. So this match has tons of potential. Toru Yano and Tomohiro Ishii. Ishii coming out of the New Japan Cup, being one of the favorites to win the tournament. They're going to team up to take on Kenny Omega and Bad Luck Fale. Fale coming out as the other finalist in the tournament, the one who fell to Shibata. This match offers a lot of potential. I'm curious to see what they do with Kenny Omega here. At some point, he should be built back up to the main event status that he had going into Wrestle Kingdom. They have not done that yet. I'm kind of wondering why they're holding off, unless they're going to use him as a launching pad when they launch their expansion in the United States, and use him as the figurehead of that movement, and then build him into a G1 Climax win, potentially back-to-back years. That doesn't happen very often, and we may be able to see him return to the main event picture a little later in the year, but they got to do something to give him more interest. Bad Luck Fale really has been establishing himself as a main event star. It'd be nice to see him get the win. The Bullet Club, if I'm predicting, is going to come out on top in this tag team match. The IWGP Junior Tag Team Championship will be defended as Tai Chi and Yoshinobu Kanemaru are going to defend their titles against Geto and Jetto. Geto and Jetto have been in New Japan Pro Wrestling for a long time. They have a huge following in New Japan, and this is another one of those high-speed, quick in-and-out types of matches. These guys are on par with the match you saw last year between Ricochet and Will Ospreay. Like, you can always expect to see the physicality, but also just the technical masterpieces that these guys can put together. Going all the way back to when Jushin Thunder Liger first debuted with the company, they have always produced these mega stars who are able to really put it together, and this tag team match should be something awesome. Now, the thing is, the IWGP Junior Heavyweight Championship has always been like a springboard launching pad opportunity to get into the main event picture. The IWGP Junior Tag Team Championship, not quite as much. A lot of times, Geto and Jetto have been in that division for quite a long time. You don't see the tag team champions getting the same push that the IWGP Junior Heavyweight Champion gets. So, this is not necessarily to promote anybody to the top of the card, but these guys get to tear the house down. They're a little bit smaller frame and really bring you guys a show that's very exciting. Roppongi Vice and Yoshihashi are going to take on Minoru Suzuki, El Desperado, and Taka Michinoku. Another stacked match. Should be a good back and forth, just fast-paced thing. Minoru Suzuki is the bulldozer of his team. That's the Suzuki Gun faction. The next match has Tiger Mask W, and Yuji Nagata teaming up with Toji Makabe, taking on Chase Owens, Yujiro Takahashi, Tama Tonga, and Tonga Loa, the Bullet Club. Again, the Bullet Club making their presence felt. My surprise here is they are slated to be relatively early in the card, and the Bullet Club is one of the biggest draws in New Japan, and they're turning into like opening match quality, and I don't understand that. I don't know why they're not capitalizing on the popularity of the Bullet Club a little bit more. Very few of the Ring of Honor stars appearing at this show. A couple here and there, but very few, and it's kind of a surprise with all the cross-promotion Ring of Honor has been doing recently with New Japan. You would have thought maybe an Adam Cole or the Young Bucks or somebody like that being on this card, but none of those are going to appear. Instead, you've got a stacked card top to bottom, almost all the championships being defended. It would have been interesting to see the 6-man Tag Team Championship defended. It would have been nice to see some of the Ring of Honor titles on the line in this event, but you got to save some of that stuff for other shows. You're heading into G1 Climax season, so maybe they're going to hold off on any more cross-promotion until they can lead up to that major announcement, but we'll see what happens. There is a pre-show match. It's going to see Dave Finlay, Jushin Liger, Manabu Nakanishi take on Nitamura, Oka, and Kawato, who are young lions coming up through the system. Hopefully at some point they'll be promoted to a more prominent position on the card. But this is what they do with these pre-show matches. They take some established stars and they put them against some of the younger up-and-coming talents to try to give them some major card experience and get them ready for the main roster, essentially, for New Japan. Jushin Liger, you couldn't learn from anybody better. Nakanishi, another one who's been there for a very long time. Great talent. And David Finlay, the son of Fit Finlay, he has really started to carve out a name for himself in New Japan. So this should be a pretty cool match to kick off the show. We're going to transition a little bit into some WWE news with Kane. His real name in the regular world is Glenn Jacobs, and he and his wife Crystal are making some major announcements. One, obviously, he's taken a lot of time off television recently to work on his insurance business that he runs with his wife. But now it is just he's getting ready to fill out the paperwork with the Knox County, Tennessee Election Commission to run for mayor. And I know people think about, you got the big red machine, this is the devil's favorite demon, all that kind of conversation, but in the real world, Glenn Jacobs is a financial whiz. He is a staunch Republican. That's the party he affiliates with. He has been involved very heavily in the political world, and now it looks like he's going to make his first venture into the political arena as the mayor, potentially, of Knox County, Tennessee. In some Impact Wrestling news, they've announced another partnership. This one is actually really interesting to me because they've announced that they're going to team up with ITV Studios in the United Kingdom to bring back the World of Sport Wrestling later this year. World of Sport Wrestling, they were a huge company back in like the mid-60s into around 1985. And then it kind of went under. And then this past year, New Year's Eve, they held a show that was just kind of like a spot show. And now they've commissioned for 10 episodes. They're actually going to bring the company back and do a 10-episode season. There's no listing yet of what type of matches are going to be, what talents are going to be on the show, how they're going to do this. But very cool to see TNA doing something to bring back a promotion that really had a huge footprint in the United Kingdom for a very long time. They were the number one promotion for a very long time. In Ring of Honor news, the Ring of Honor officials are disputing the news release earlier in the week that there was a potential buyout coming from WWE, stating that they will collaborate with WWE whenever they have a documentary or a DVD or something of that nature, because they do have so many Ring of Honor talents in World Wrestling Entertainment. They're making it very clear that they're not discussing a buyout at this time. Now, this could just be fodder for the news outlets, because if they start talking about a buyout, it could affect their product, it could affect contract negotiations with other wrestlers. If you think about it, if you're the Young Bucks, okay, they're signed to a 2-year deal, but if you're the Young Bucks and you were coming into a negotiation period and you didn't want to work for WWE, and there's word out there that WWE may be buying your company, that may hold you back from wanting to accept a new contract, and that's something that Ring of Honor clearly does not want to be the case. In the event that this whole thing falls through, you wouldn't want to be losing talents to other promotions because there was word out there that you might be being bought out. I don't know if this is legitimate, that there is no buyout in the future, or if this is a somewhat of a political ploy to keep their talent from bolting when their contracts come due because they want to negotiate a better contract with WWE or another promotion. In the world of mixed martial arts, Miesha Tate has had a reputation for several years as being one of the legitimate tough girls of UFC, but recently she did an interview with Fox Sports, and she was asked about whether or not she'd ever want to wrestle, specifically in the World Wrestling Entertainment, and she said, "I would love to. It would be fun. I would love to. I'm open to all kinds of things like that. I would be a lot of fun." She retired last year. She lost a match in UFC at UFC 205 in November to Raquel Pennington, and people have kind of been wondering what she's going to do. She's young, very young, so she has plenty of time left, and she's so athletic. What could she do? And wrestling seems like it's a natural progression. It seems like something she'd be really good at. So it'll be curious to see. WWE had so much interest in Ronda Rousey when she was at the peak of her game. With Miesha Tate, because there could be a better opportunity there, because she wasn't the unstoppable Ronda Rousey. She was just a really good fighter, and with that being her resume, you could bring her in as a legitimate female wrestler, and you wouldn't have the same reaction as the people who were like, "Oh, we wanted Ronda Rousey before she got beat, and now we got to have her after she got beat." It makes it look like WWE is a lower product, whereas with Miesha Tate, there was never the build of her being the unstoppable female. So you bring her in, she just is a legitimate fighter who comes in, and she could add some real serious talent to the women's division. WWE has announced the Legacy Award winners for the 2017 Hall of Fame. They're inductees: Judy Grable, a female star from the 1950s. Toots Mondt, if you don't know who Toots Mondt is, he was a former shooter wrestler himself. He worked with Ed Strangler Lewis, and in the 1920s, his booking controlled the World Championship for a little while, and he was business partners in the Northeast with Vince McMahon Sr. So very influential. Ricky Dozan, who is known as the father of Japanese pro wrestling. If you've never seen any matches, they're hard to find, but Ricky Dozan really transcended the sport. He was in mass media, he was in movies, he had relationships with people like Antonio Inoki and Muhammad Ali. He was very, very popular, and unfortunately he passed away early in his lifetime, but he was just so influential for the Japanese wrestling audience. Farmer Burns was a world champion in the 1800s. He was a coach and promoter for Frank Gotch, and he was really instrumental in helping Gotch become like the first real big major superstar in wrestling. You know, before that it was like going to little fairs and, you know, different special attraction things. This is where he was able to make it where Frank Gotch could go into an arena and start selling out an arena. And this is back in a time when they weren't doing all these high spots and special moves. This is when wrestling was legit wrestling, where you may have had predetermined winners, but the matches took, an hour, 2 hours, more than one fall, usually 2 out of 3 falls, that kind of thing. And this is when it just seemed more real. And Farmer Burns was instrumental in helping Frank Gotch get over in that capacity. Luther Lindsay was a noted shooter. If you don't know what a shooter is, that's a real wrestler, stretcher, a guy who can really hook you and be a legitimate threat to somebody. And in a time when the whole choreographed staging of pro wrestling wasn't as well known, he's one of those guys who, if he didn't like the way you were booking him, he could legitimately make you submit because he was an actual shooter. Not a huge major star, but he's still somebody who was effective back in the early heyday of wrestling. Dr. Jerry Graham, one of the legendary Graham brothers, he and Eddie Graham, which coincidentally, they actually weren't brothers, but I'm suspecting that these guys that Dr. Jerry Graham is being inducted because he was Vince Jr.'s one of his favorite wrestlers ever. Talked in several interviews about the different guys who influenced him and who he really liked. He loved Buddy Rogers, he loved Gorgeous George, and he loved Dr. Jerry Graham. Dr. Jerry Graham going in. June Byers. June Byers is a big name. She claimed the women's world title from 1953 to 1964. She was considered to be one of the best women wrestlers of the entire era when she was wrestling, because Mildred Burke, who had been the stalwart of women's wrestling, had retired, and she was just the be-all, end-all of women's wrestling. And then June Byers was a great transition before Fabulous Moolah came up and became the flag bearer of women's wrestling. So June Byers, really huge contribution to women's wrestling. Haystacks Calhoun, this guy was between, depending on what point of his career, 450 pounds all the way up to 600 pounds. This guy was a monster, wearing the overalls. This is like Hillbilly Jim and Uncle Elmer long before they were around. And he was like one of those touring attractions. You take him around the country, and people would just pay to see him just because of his immense size. Much in the same mold as people like, The Big Show, Andre the Giant, El Gigante, people who, are just larger than life and who people just come to see wrestle because of their just this huge mass of humanity. So congratulations to all of them being inducted into the Hall of Fame for the Legacy Award 2017. Today's indie intros. I have 3 promotions for the diehard fans. I've been doing this every episode, and apparently people really like this segment. I didn't know it was going to go over so well. Today, I've got one that I'm very excited about from Canada, International Wrestling Syndicate, or some places they promote it as Internet Wrestling Syndicate. Depends on which video you're watching. But if you go to YouTube and pull up Kevin Owens versus PCO versus Sami Zayn, IWS. This match is Kevin Owens before he was Kevin Owens, is when he's Kevin Steen. PCO is Pierre Carl Ouellette, who is famous for working with Jacques Rougeau back in the 90s. And Sami Zayn, who you all know who he is now, but back then he was still El Generico, but that's fine. But he's also like 145 pounds in this match. So check that out. This is supposedly one of the first times they get in the ring together, talking about Owens and Zayn, and it's for IWS up in Canada. Very cool match. I'm thoroughly entertained by it. Zayn, it blows my mind how tiny he is in this match. Going to Japan, we have Dramatic Dream Team Pro Wrestling, or DDT Pro Wrestling. And if you go to YouTube, look up Guanchulo versus Yuki Ueno. Clearly not WWE level talents, but when you think about what it is, you look at the production value of the show. For young kids working in a promotion that clearly doesn't have a ton of money, they probably don't have the same kind of training and expertise that you find here, just based on the quality of their performance. But the match, when you take those things into consideration, these guys put on a pretty good match. It's actually a pretty cool show. So by all means, check that out. And I'm going to do one inside the United States today. We're going to go for West Coast Wrestling Connection. Now, I don't have a specific match for you. What I have is they do every episode on their YouTube channel. So you've got E146, West Coast Wrestling Connection on PDX TV, and you'll see they have about a 55 to 58 minutes each episode. This particular episode is headlined by a match with Matt Stryker, who many people know is one of the announcers on Lucha Underground. Very cool match. I mean, a cool promotion. Their production value, it's not quite Ring of Honor, but it's close. It looks legitimate. The talents look like wrestlers. They don't look like these puny guys with like rubber band arms you see at some of the independent promotions. It's actually a pretty solid promotion. The announcers doing the play-by-play leave a lot to be desired, but at the end of the day, that's okay because they're putting together some decent wrestling action. So check out West Coast Wrestling Connection. This day in pro wrestling history, 26 years ago, WrestleMania 7 featured Hulk Hogan defeating the Sergeant Slaughter for the WWF Championship, but that is not why I picked this one. This is also when we get to see The Undertaker defeat Superfly Jimmy Snuka in his first appearance at a WrestleMania, launching that long 21-0 streak that he had. 24 years ago, the WWE Hall of Fame was created, with the first inaugural inductee being Andre the Giant. 21 years ago, WCW presented Uncensored, which was headlined by the Mega Powers, Hulk Hogan and Randy Savage, going against and defeating the Alliance to End Hulkamania, which was a bizarre combination of Ric Flair, Arn Anderson, Meng the Barbarian, Lex Luger, the Taskmaster, Z Gangsta, and the Ultimate Solution in a 3-tier Doomsday cage match. What a horrible idea for a match. I don't even know where the bookers in WCW came up with this nonsense. 14 years ago, Bill Goldberg signs with WWE for the first time. Now, this would be a short run. He was only there for about a year, and then he would bolt, but at least we got to see him. He did do some important things in that year. Faced The Rock, faced Chris Jericho, won the championship from Triple H, participated in Elimination Chamber, went ahead and had his match with Brock at WrestleMania for the first time. So he did do some very important things. So his first run, though maybe not as long as some people would have liked, was still influential. 15 years ago was the first brand extension, WWE Draft. This is where they first started doing 10 picks per show, and the rest of the draft was held offline on WWE.com, and people really didn't know what to expect coming out of this. And it definitely changed the business quite a bit. When you didn't have the competition of WCW anymore, you had to do something to freshen up the wrestling world and bring more viewers, and this was their attempt. And I have to say, for a short period of time, it was pretty successful. When it started to be less successful, they merged the brands back together, and now we're to the point where with the advent of NXT and this constant funneling of talent to the main roster, they've been able to reintroduce that brand extension. It's relatively successful again. So 15 years ago, first time they got to do that. Happy 32nd birthday to Lana, Rusev's wife, who had gotten her start down in Florida State. She was one of the Florida State cowgirls that would be promoted all over television, and she ended up going into acting and into modeling and things like that. She did a little stint with a couple other girls where they did a pop song, and then when she left that, she ended up getting a tryout and went down to WWE Performance Center and became the Lana that you all know now. So happy 32nd birthday to Lana. And today would have been the 102nd birthday of classic wrestling pioneer Gorgeous George. If you don't know who Gorgeous George is, and I'm not talking about the female from, WCW Macho Man Randy Savage girlfriend. I'm not talking about that Gorgeous George. I'm talking about Gorgeous George, the classic wrestler, black and white films, first guy to really hype up the whole flamboyant character. He would come to the ring with the big robes. I think in a lot of ways he is as big an influence on Ric Flair as Nature Boy Buddy Rogers was. Just the first real guy with almost like that Ric Flair type of attitude. So if you've never seen him, by all means pop on YouTube and check him out sometime. Cool matches. Just, you don't even have to watch the matches. Just seeing him walk out and how he interacted with the fans was very interesting. The look back match for this episode on YouTube, go look up John Cena versus C.W. Anderson. And the match is going to pop up. This is when John Cena was referred to as the prototype, and you get to see him do the proto slam for the finisher at the end of the match and see how he's evolved as a wrestler. The kid first jumps in the ring, he almost flips over the top rope because he's so excited to get out there and wrestle. And it's kind of bizarre to see him back when he had the buzz down hair and he was so unrefined. There's a lot of people who don't think he's refined now. If you think he's not great now, take a look at him back then. You'll really blow your mind. We're going to go to our fantasy booking segment of the show. We have our tournament going on. We're almost halfway through the first round. We're going to go to matches 33 and 34, where we've got Drew Galloway taking on classic wrestler Jack Briscoe. Drew Galloway, of course, the former TNA heavyweight champion. Jack Briscoe, a former NWA heavyweight champion. I want to qualify those because some people have been asking in the question boxes, why are you including certain people in this tournament? Well, I'm going to start telling you each time I give you a match why these guys are here. All world champions are included in this. I have almost every champion from WWE, WWF, WCW, ECW, NWA, going back relatively far. I try not to go too far back. There's Lucha Underground, Ring of Honor, Impact. So I really wanted to give a good representation of all the brands I could. Our second match, match 34, Austin Aries, former Ring of Honor world champion, TNA world champion, versus Bobby Roode. Again, I don't even need to introduce Bobby Roode, NXT's current champion, former TNA champion. So, Austin Aries versus Bobby Roode, Drew Galloway versus Jack Briscoe. Today we have another one of our YouTube fan polls. Who should walk out of WrestleMania 33 as SmackDown Women's Champion? For the two matches I just announced and for the fan poll, pop into YouTube, put it in the comment section, and give me your vote for who should be the winners of those matches and who should be the SmackDown Women's Champion coming out of WrestleMania 33. Don't forget about the Fro Life Planning Contest. For those who don't know what Fro Life Planning is, we help students and adult learners find their path to higher education or that new career. Every month we give away a free 30-minute one-on-one phone consultation to a lucky winner to aid in the planning of their path to the college, university, new job, career technical school, whatever you need. There is no purchase necessary. Just follow a couple simple steps. 1, launch iTunes in your computer, pop over to the Fro Wrestling Podcast webpage, subscribe to our feed, and write a review. Once you click submit, shoot over to our other webpage at www.frolifeplanning.com/contest and put your email address in there, and we can match up your email address there to your comment in iTunes and enter you for one of those free consultations. That's all the time we have for this episode. Make sure you check back with us in episode 53, where we're going to review the happenings in the world of pro wrestling. Special thanks as always to bensound.com and purpleplanet.com for producing all our music and sound effects used throughout today's show. Today's podcast was sponsored in part by Beazle Games. Bringing a new friend to family game night is easy with Sketchy People. Showcase your artistic side in this new game from Beazle Games by going to www.thegamecrafter.com/sketchypeople to pick up your copy today. And to AlleyRepair.com. Contact Alley Repair today for servicing of all your classic skee-ball, pinball, and arcade game needs. We want to thank you for listening to today's podcast, and we encourage you to go to our website at www.frolifeplanning.com to learn more about what Mr. Fro can do for you on your path to higher education. Remember, Fro Life Education and Planning is for today, for tomorrow, and for life with Fro Life. I'm Fred Froelich, better known as Mr. Fro, and I want to thank you for taking a few moments with us today. And if you're looking for more wrestling news and rumors, go to www.tsjsports.com/WWE for my latest articles on the world of professional wrestling. Until next episode, take care, everybody. Have a good night.